Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Site Club, the Tom Numbers Show. News with Tom Numbers and top of your game. And I've got my friend and fellow. What's the describing word I can use for yourself, Gene? Everybody knows you as the genius, Gene Decode. So I think that suffices. So, Gene, it's great to have you on the show again. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Tom. Thank you for having me back. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And before we get going, how can people find you, Gene? Where's the best places for people to
Well,
find you and the
most
things you do?
likely, and tonight we got a big one on my website on deep dives, which is at genedecode.org. So I'm doing a new updated version of the DUMS decodes, deep underground military bases. So I just put
Yeah,
it down because people are saying they don't exist. They do. And so I'm just going very carefully, step by step now, for the people to understand. This is just a basic introduction. Then I'll have a deep, like underground,
yeah,
or underwater, however you want to put it,
yeah,
intro, and then I'll go into the bases themselves in part three. So tonight at 6:30 Mountain Daylight Time, we're now in daylight savings, which was confusing as heck for me when I'm going to people like you that don't do
I
that.
know.
It's like the
Yeah,
time is last time I got mixed up with Nicholas Vinyamin, and I got 2 hours off of what because I recalculated the wrong direction for the hour. I'm like,
yeah,
oh man, really missed the interview. So the tonight we'll be doing the update. I go into technologies. I show some maps. And a little video at the end. I just click through the video that's just on YouTube that you can find anywhere of different, bases and tunnels and all of these things, and showing the vast amount of boring technologies, nuclear technologies for underground, even modular, where they can deassemble and reassemble, kind of like Legos, modular power system for deep underground use. And then additionally, even a scalar nuclear power system, in other words, a standing wave. And then there's all kinds of different technologies and things, and I go into some information where I get my information from. I have all the links so people can now do their own research, so they can see where I'm getting this. I have things from James Casbolt, from Phil Snyder. Phil Snyder got murdered for putting that information out, from Martin William Cooper, who wrote Behold a Pale Horse, which is one of the first books other than Dr. Coleman's book, Committee of 300, when I first woke up to all of this garbage and this Satanism back in 1990. It was pivotal, and I got to actually meet, unfortunately, never Martin William Cooper, but I did get to meet Dr. Coleman in person and talk to him a little bit. So it's my main place I go is the genedecode.org. I also have a Rumble, which is Real Gene Decode. And then, of course, I have a social media presence. I don't actually, but the Blessed for Service team helps to keep that on social media, both on Truth Social and on Twitter and on, I guess that's X now, and on Telegram, which is Real Gene Decode. So that's where you can find me, everybody. Thank you. And then I have a free website that the Blessed for Service also maintains, where you can look at documents, get all kinds of things. That's free completely, which is Blessed for Service. Also, there's a free section of deep dives, what I call deep dives, which is the surface area on genedecode.org. It's just the surface area, and you can go look around. You can see a few of the videos, and you can go look around what's on deep dives. You can't view everything, and you do get a 3 free day trial for, you can look around, look at videos, and if it's free, you have up to 3 days to cancel and not get charged. So thank you, Tom, for asking. And where can we find you?
well, you're welcome.
I never asked that
Well,
one before.
everyone go and subscribe to Gene. So I'm on YouTube on Tom Numbers Site Club on YouTube. I also have Top of Your Game Tom Numbers, or Top of Your Game with Tom Numbers on YouTube. It's like my second channel. And I'm on Twitter, on X, Real Tom Numbers. I'm on Telegram, LinkedIn, Locals. That's my subscription site. Rumble I'm on. If I said that, I've got a couple of channels on Rumble. So I think the only ones I'm not on are TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I think they're the main three that I'm not on. All the others I am. So yeah, links below, and hit Gene's links and subscribe to his website. You'll get amazing information there. Talking of X, Gene. So there's a few things you brought up that you just described. I'd like to talk to you more in depth about. But one, you mentioned X, and something that came to my attention just probably 2 weeks ago, maybe slightly less than 2 weeks ago, was the X of the eclipse over the United States coming up on 8th of April. And the first one was in 2017 on August 21st. But then, so it went one direction, and then it's doing another direction. But they intersect, so there's an X, and it's interesting because, as you've mentioned, Elon has changed to X. Twitter is 115 in numbers, which makes me think of 11/5, November 5th, the election this year. And then X is the year 24, because in the simple alphanumeric alphabet, the gematria, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, because of the order of the alphabet of the letters and the numbers. The 24th letter in the English alphabet is indeed X. So we're in the year of X, and we've got this divine eclipse, and there's a lot of X's going around, like, with Twitter and some of the coins, etc. But it was like, so I wondered if you've got any thoughts on that, on the trajectory of the path. And it just seems to me that a lot of these big things that we're seeing are pointing more heavenly, more divinely, and it's becoming more and more obvious, particularly for people in our community that listen to yourself and myself, but also for, quote unquote, maybe more of the normal population that haven't really delved into too many things over the last few years. But nevertheless, something like that is going to catch quite a few people's attention. And if they drill into it for more than 10 seconds, they'll know that it's completing of an X, and we're in the year of X24, So just wanted any thoughts on or knowledge about that, Gene, that viewers might find interesting.
Yes, this eclipse actually was very interesting in that it crossed through, I think it was 7 or 8 cities named Nineveh.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting. Nineveh was one of the oldest cities and most populous cities of the Syrian Empire. It was situated on the east bank of the Tigris, which, of course, that by the modern city of Mosul, Mosul, Iraq. I'm sure I don't speak Arabic at all, so I'm sure I have mispronounced that probably. But the Assyrians were notorious for their cruelty and their idolatry. And so, we look at that idolatry and things. That's a lot of what we see going on, especially in the United States, with the Satanists worship what they worship. So I pretty much just said it. But it's this, and Putin, in an interview he just finished, because he's, it's just a few days before the Russian elections. And he just finished this interview when he's talking about the vampirism, where the deletes, as I call them, the elite delete, we want to delete.
Yeah.
Now let's delete them. They literally, he said, they fill their stomach with human flesh, but he's calling it vampires. Of course, that means blood, and we know what they use. It's a play on words that he's doing. He's doing a play of what's called master speak, where he's using words that don't precisely describe what he's saying, but do precisely describe what's happening with the blood of children, what they do to get the ADRE chromie stuff. So in that, it's very descriptive of what the Western world is about. And then the Bitcoin, it's also being announced on X by Ariel, that the Bitcoin is tied to the US dollar, which is getting ready to go into free fall. We now see Putin and the BRICS coming out with a digital version of way to move over 40, I think it's 40 different economic instruments, bonds, et cetera, all kinds of things digitally, But Bitcoin is backed by nothing at all. Even the founder of Bitcoin doesn't exist, and it's actually it has the name that is the person that has the founding block actually ties to symbolism. And so if you take the name in two pieces, it has a meaning to it to show you how decrepit that system is. Bitcoin is what supplies all of this human trafficking, child trafficking. It is in the dark web how almost 80 to 90% of the children and the humans are moved in the underground and auctioned off on the dark web. Like I saw, this person who rescues people coming over the border from the coyotes, and then later, 3 days later, was shown on Channel 4 News. This person was shown rescuing them out of coyote dens. 4 days later, God took me on the dark web, and I saw the same children being auctioned off through Bitcoin. So they're being bid on, these children that were just rescued, to be sold into slavery and the worst of the worst kind of things, like we saw what happened in the tunnels under New York City with the synagogue kind of thing going on there, in which they do these sexual terrible things to children, and then they sacrifice them, and they clean them and wash themselves and all this stuff. So you have this going on in the Nineveh temples. Long ago, they were, the Syrians in the Nineveh area had a culture just like that, where it was one of the most important trade routes, and it was the Fertile Crescent all went through there. But the significance of the Nineveh of this time, of the sun setting and eclipsing, in other words, it's eclipsing on this vampire ball, as Putin is kind of putting it, of this vampirism in the West. The sun is setting on that, or it's eclipsing on that. It's coming to an end. And so, we look at this Neolithic. I mean, you're talking Nineveh is Neolithic. It's essentially Stone Age times, by the way they look at it, Copper Stone Age, early what they call Chalcolithic. So lithic goes to stone. So like a monolith, it's usually saying stone, although now there's all these metal monoliths showing up all over the place. I talked about those yesterday when I Indigo Indian interview. But the Tigris-Euphrates area, in the area of this Nineveh area in the fourth millennium, was such a decrepit and evil area. And now we see this exact same kind of thing going on in the US and all over the world, including England. We also see now the London Corporation, now that Lord Rothschild is gone, is eclipsing and going down, because he is the world banking system. And Trump, when he went, I showed this, he went to Westminster Abbey, he signed a huge book. That's actually the ledger for the Crown Corporation, or the Virginia Company in the US, which is the city of London that owns all of the world banks through the Rothschilds, that are the representatives for the payeurs, which just means the paymaster. And so that's the lower levels of the black nobility. And even the black nobility, we see the queen is gone, the king is dying. Now the Princess Kate is compromised. She hasn't been seen since March 11th. The sun is eclipsing and going down on this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this vampire feast that's been going on since the monolithic era. And it's a very symbolic of how this eclipse has passed through all of these Nineveh cities that go across, and even going into their president, air quotes, of the United States, Sleepy Joe, as Trump calls him. And Putin is talking about Sleepy Joe and how he would prefer him to be reelected and all this. And at the same time, he's laughing because he said that, they're saying he backed Trump, but yet Trump was upset with him because he backed he thought it would be better for Sleepy Joe to be the president. He's easier to handle, in other words, and all of this stuff. But Biden actually said in a recent speech that the type of roof you have with the fires that occurred in Texas, you would have not had your home burned to the ground if you had the right type of roof, like what we saw in Hawaii with the fires there. So blue roofs, certain, because 666 again, an amazing number. Terahertz does not touch the color blue. So all of the stars over that have properties over in Hawaii there, where the fire was, have their roofs blue. And they're literally putting out what they're doing in front of the world. And so we also see Victoria Nuland stepping down. We see Jim Carrey stepping down. The fake climate, green baloney. We see the car manufacturers like Elon Musk going to a hybrid car and even a full-out car like Toyota is now producing that runs on water, on breaking water apart, so you can use the hydrogen. So you will be completely clean because all you give off is water vapor. So it's an amazing time that we are in. We're seeing I went to my banking institution this last week, and I was talking to her, making some deposits and pulling out sums of cash, and she goes, and trying to pay off towards my mortgage to get it down as low as possible. And she goes, "What are you doing?" "I'm trying to get debt free and I'm trying to get cash." "Is this banking institution Basel III compliant?" She goes, "Yeah, I think it is. Could you find out so next time I come back in another week and pull out more cash, so they don't think I'm doing anything, that you can't even pull your money out normally anymore, or they think you're structuring." But, she goes, "Yeah, I think it is." And I said, "Yeah, you remember when you had your floor and your walls all torn up here, your concrete floor, and they were putting those tubes in? That was for gold and silver coins. It's pretty obvious that you got trained on all that Nasara stuff." And she actually goes, "Yeah, we did." I was like, got ya. She admitted it. I was like, because if you ask them straight out, they go, "I can't talk about that." So I slid it in underneath the radar, as we say. So thank you, Tom.
Can I ask which bank that was, Gene, so people know in America which bank is compliant?
Mostly I deal with a credit union. Your credit unions are owned by the people themselves. So for me, it's much safer to go into a credit union. You have to be careful because a lot of credit unions have so many, like my mom was in a credit union in Arizona, which had fees if you don't use your money for a month. It has fees if you do use your money. If you, for every, by the time you get done with the fees, you might as well just put your money in a hole in the ground and pull it out when you need it. She had a lot of money, having grown up in the early years of her life in the Great Depression in the United States. I don't know what was so great about why they call it great, I guess big, but the Big Depression, in which she had a lot of money in coffee, big coffee tins and things like that, coffee cans. So she did that all over the house, and pieces of soap and all kinds of things, like people growing up in that time frame did. And I said, "You'd have been better off keeping all your money," because I pulled her money out. I'm like, and she hadn't used it for 6 months, and there was massive charges on her. "What are all these charges?" They go, "Well, it's because she's not using her money." And I told, by the time I got done and I was walking out, I told people, "Pull your money out because you're getting robbed." So with credit unions, they tend to be a better investment, but you got to be careful.
Yeah. Maybe put something to gold and silver. I work with Matt Geiger from Midas Gold, and he advises people on how to, they can do all of their savings, but if not, just a portion, just so they're protected. They've actually got some physical, bullion they can have, as opposed to waking up one day and maybe the Dodd-Frank Act kicks in if their bank or union's not compliant. I wanted to ask one other thing, Gene, going back to the X with this eclipse. So you mentioned the royalty and you mentioned presidents, and I noticed. So obviously the thickness of the trajectory is quite still quite wide, but it's it's this big line going across America. But in the path of the trajectory, there are many cities, and as you mentioned, Nineveh, and then the one in 2017, lots of Salems. So you've got the thing of Jerusalem, but Salem. And so they're the two kind of main ones, because there's about, I don't know, It's either 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 9
Yeah,
Salems that they had, and then similar within another.
I just looked it up. So there are 8 Nineveh cities. Yeah. So there's Nineveh, Texas, Nineveh. We'll just go the Missouri, Texas, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, and Nova Scotia.
Yeah. And there's also, so I noticed this, there's lots of small towns along the way, but people can look and you'll find in this path that's going to happen on the 8th of April, there's also a town called Windsor, which is the house of the royal family's adopted name. And you've talked about that being falling, and effectively it's going to be covered in darkness as this eclipse takes place. And then the next one down, going in a southwesterly direction, is Clinton. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like you've got the Windsors being covered up, they're going, and the Clintons. So metaphorically, energetically, and also townlistically, if that's a real word, which it probably isn't, but I'm going to claim it for today, you've got Windsor and you've got Clintons being covered in darkness as this eclipse takes place along the Nineveh line, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting, how it comes through Canada, Windsor, of course, being in Ontario, and then coming down across the U.S. and all the way through Texas. It's just extremely fascinating how this, and like you mentioned, also the previous one ties to what's going on in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think the other thing with the whole thing with X? So I was originally thinking it was going, because I was looking at it on a map and it was a big blown up picture of the US, but then it's going through and you could see it's not. I mean, relatively from English terms it's far away, but US terms it's not far. So it's quite close to Kansas City, Missouri, and I've talked about that quite a lot. But it's actually maybe a couple hundred miles, maybe 400 miles across, going east. But someone kindly pointed out that lives right near the kind of the point of the two crosses, the two lines making the cross, and it's a town called Carbondale. And I thought that was really interesting. I was like, Carbondale. So it's like, you've got the silicone agenda, you've got the carbon, the attack on humanity. We're carbon, but if we're upgraded and we become more crystalline as we get upgraded, I was like, that's very interesting that this X marks the spot, and the actual town is called Carbondale, which I thought was, again, quite interesting. It could be called anything. I've never even heard of a place called Carbondale, but nevertheless, there it is. And it's like you've got X's, obviously, in DNA. You've got the chromosomes, either XY or XX. And it's like, what's this whole thing of X and carbon? And we've had the two agendas going on, and obviously God wins. And it's interesting that the start, the line of the heavenly bodies are pointing that out. They're smudging out, the bad names, but also if you look beyond, you can see, carbon is right there, and just fascinating. I think it's amazing how it's been orchestrated, and it's obviously been planned divinely for a long time. It's it was coming, and it's about to arrive.
Yes, and of course, Clinton is in Arkansas. No big surprise, but most people already now know, I believe, that a lot of the children and people that disappeared in Haiti, like Trump said, in Haiti, it takes a city, a town or something. He made a comment. He says, and Hillary's taken many in Haiti, so it's tying to this. And then additionally, the X to me also means like Christ on the cross when he was laid. The X round marks the spot where Christ was laid. We go to the cross, but not with Christ on the cross. He was laid to rest, and he rose after 3 days. So it's talking to the resurrection and that we are given, and this is the time of that resurrection. And I did a video I'll be putting up on my Real Gene Decode Rumble that's on Deep Dives about the change of the separation of what I call the A line and the G line, the God line and the Arma line. We'll just call it that, the Arma line. And so people are saying the Arma line is the only thing that exists, but this Shaolin Master Jihin Yi is actually talking, as well as the Blade Divide 144,000, of this shift of a natural separation of the two timelines, and many will not be able to make it, or won't make it, or don't want to make it. And so we see even Ariel on Twitter, on X, is talking about the harsh realities of speaking truth to power, which is a reflection on courage, sacrifice, and then the allure of comfort. So talking about the whistleblower, John Barnett, who was murdered recently, I believe, if I'm correct, it's the same one, for exposing Boeing aircraft, the Airbus, and the situations involving that. And people like myself that wish to remain anonymous, I want it to be about the message I bring. And if it doesn't fit you, then go to where the message does fit you. If you want to be on the Arma line and believe there are no domes and the world's flat, fine, go ahead and go there. That's not my choice, but if you want that. And I watched another recent video that Ariel posted, or maybe it was another person, and it was a KGB person talking about the submersion of intellect of a whole culture into propaganda for so long that even if they get proof that what they know is completely wrong, they cannot see it. Even if you literally took them, he said it was a KGB guy, you could take them to a Stalag in Russia, they still wouldn't believe it unless you kicked them in the hindsight to where it crushed their jewels, so to speak. That would they believe it? So it's this, the message, people can't hear it, but they want others like myself who are wanting to remain anonymous to expose themselves so they can watch us tap dance. And Ariel talks about this, that they want to live in their ivory towers of power and wealth, and status, power, and control. And it's no longer survival of the fittest. Ariel speaks to survival of the fittest. For me, it's survival of the filthiest of these deletes that want to rule this way. And Ariel, he refers to the movie Matrix, of course, that's an X again. And then we look at that and the role of Cypher in that movie. Which Cypher is not actually decoding like the world gave me gene decode, because I take information that's hidden and I decode it. He was actually, Cypher means to encode. And what was Cypher doing? He wanted his steak and his potatoes and to sacrifice everybody for that. So he could have his comfort zone while everybody else got sacrificed. And he served the elites. He served the system. He betrayed people and threw them under the bus. He was actually on the ship Nebuchadnezzar. So now you go to what is the truth about Nebuchadnezzar and what kind of a person was he. He is the one that went in and sacrificed and invaded Jerusalem and tore down a lot and killed a lot of Hebrew, or what we call Jewish people today. And so it is really fascinating to see how all of this ties together. Nebuchadnezzar, all of these posts by Ariel are really enlightening now of where we are, what's going on in the world, plus what you brought up on the eclipse. Everything is just incredibly elucidating and enlightening. You look at, for example, just the life of Nebuchadnezzar and the type of things he did, and how evil he was. That was the 1200, around 1100 BC, which is when he ruled. And so he laid siege to Jerusalem. He looted the golden treasures. He destroyed the temple. All of these things. He abducted the Judean king from his court. He ruled Babylon from the year 605 to 502 BC. I guess that's years ago is what I was referring to previously, so just to make it clear for people. And he was the most influential of the reigning kings of the Neo-Babylonian. And it's interesting that it's referred to as Neo because we talk about neocons today. And he conducted the city of Babylon to its height of power. But at the same time, he was again in this Syrian area where we're talking previously with Nineveh and all of this, which is the same Fertile Crescent area of the world. And he subjugated and destroyed, just like we see in Gaza, many, many, many really fine and good people that are the bloodlines of Christ, of the two blood, that protect the bloodline of Christ. Sorry, the bloodlines of Abraham, which is Ishmael and Isaac. So these are the Ishmaeli that are in Palestine, which guard the bloodline of Christ, the Druze bloodline, of which Trump is part of. So and we watch the constant attempt to crucify Trump, and it's never working. It's never, ever working. And so it's just really insanely amazing how all of this is coming about and continuing on, and we're seeing everything as a symbology. So Ariel talking about the matrix, the X there, which goes to the cipher and his role, and the Nebuchadnezzar, and that ties to Nineveh and through Syria, and people wanting to have their status quo while other people risk themselves, like this gentleman who was talking about the Airbus, John Barnett. Plus, we have the young gentleman, Aaron Bushnell, who could not take the orders he was given to be ready to go to Palestine in a moment's notice. So he emulated himself in front of the Israel embassy. And now all kinds of retired Air Force personnel are burning their uniforms. And remember, Aaron Bushnell, free Palestine. We're watching the separation of the wheat from the chaff, and young men, incredibly, beyond my comprehension, heroic. And they demonize him immediately and say all this stuff. He's Aryan or whatever. It's just on and on. They demonize the good people, and then people turn on the good people and demonize them further. And they're just wanting to be like Cypher. They want to enjoy all the fruits without really having to work for them, to really get out there and to do the hard work and to risk their safety. And they want somebody to risk it all, and then they can get rid of them. So I'm doing my best not to risk it all so they get rid of me, but thank you, Tom.
Yeah, you're right, Gene. And yeah, Aaron Bushnell, obviously I noticed him with his story and his name, same as my last name. And Ariel, I follow Ariel's posts, and I know the one you're talking about, how he described how they want, Anons to reveal themselves so they can, attack them even more. I was going to ask you this question, but now you brought it up. So Ariel talked about, maybe a week or two ago, he talked about these, for want of a better phrase, monsters in national parks, ones that most of us aren't aware of. And he said, he basically was describing them and giving lots of accounts of it, or pointing us to where people giving testimonials of their encounters with them. And they always have to tell you, don't they? So you've got things like American Werewolf in London. You've got all these things in films and in stories and TV shows, but 99% of the time it's usually a documentary at some level. But it was quite fascinating how he said, we've got to be careful of these beasts, that looks like they're going to come to the surface more because of the destruction of the dams and other areas where they may have been, and with the final cleansing. But do you have any commentary on that? In terms, you've probably spoken about it in a lot of your work in the past, but maybe some current stuff in regards to that, with what Ariel was talking about these, these beasts, and what they are and who they are and why they're there, and what people maybe need to be aware of in terms of enjoying nature. I don't want to put people off going out on trails and all the rest of it, because it's one of God's wonderful things of being here on earth. But he did point the finger and the word of caution in regards to those beasts that probably 99.9% of the population have no idea exist.
Yeah, so it's realize who the cabal and what type of individuals they are. They're psychopathic Satanists, narcissists, which if they are coming to where they know they're going to lose, and they have all of these assets, like these cryptid creatures that they created of a mixture of, some animal, wolves, whatever, and humans, and whatever else, these chimera, they're not going to allow them just to be burned to death in the dumps. They'll release them. And of course, there's many dumps under national parks. You look at all the 411s of people disappearing. And I don't even go into them since I've had my husky dogs, because they don't allow you to take your dogs outside of the parking lots on the trails, even on leash. Why? Because a dog will defend you against that kind of creature, and then a powerful big dog could damage, or even possibly, if it's trained how to do these things, kill such a creature. And that's a value, an asset to the cabal. They have all of these things. They're not going to just let them be destroyed in the dumps with themselves. They'll loose them out in the world to make it harder for the general populace. They look at us as vermin anyway. They just want us to be destroyed so they can inherit the earth and own it all. They're just wanting it to be, again, tied to the carbon and the graphene and the black goo that Harold Couch talks about with Dr. Lee Merritt recently about the bad black goo that came here, he says, from a world. It's actually two worlds, Ariana and Nan, the constellation Scion that blew up, and now that black goo, the bad black goo, is here, and they're using all of this in the recent warp speed, kind of thing of giving everybody this in their arm, in which they're being AI'd. And so we're tying all of these things together, like you said, Carbondale, and I don't think it's any accident that your name and Aaron Bushnell, your last names are the same. It's tying everything together. This is how God works. Everything is being tied together. So these cryptid creatures in the national parks, I was going up last winter for a vacation up in the mountains, and they had a whole section of the road shut down for shoulder work, they said, and I know that road really, really well. There is no shoulder. Okay, so we had to take this long route around in the middle of the night, and all of these people, I know a construction worker, they have a certain body type most of the time, even the flag wavers and all this. What I was looking at are not construction workers. I'm looking at special forces. I go, cryptids on the loose. That's what we're dealing with here. And they had the right type of vehicles to grab them and put them in the vehicles. You're not looking at construction equipment. You're looking at big, huge vehicles to put something in there that's not rocks and not concrete and none of this stuff. Then when we came back and it was open, there was nothing done. The ground was unturned. The road was not changed. There was no new asphalt, no broken asphalt, no broken shoulder, no new, metal curbing, the metal guardrails. Nothing was changed at all. They had done no work on the shoulder whatsoever. So I know, what I'm seeing and what makes sense. You have to learn to open your eyes. What does you're being told fit to what they are saying and what you're seeing? Do those all fit? What is the most logical thing? And so you look at these cryptids and these other kind of creatures. I talked about this with Kirsten. She goes, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't only believe in it, I absolutely know it's so. I've actually seen some of these kind of creatures. There's a certain area that if you go through, it's the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer speaks to this. There's an area they did a treaty at the end of the Civil War. Part of it was to have the United States a country of the living and not the undead. And that Battle of Gettysburg and all of that, it's pretty much a documentary. You look at the North when they were going house to house and rounding up silver to go by the Underground Railroad. They went by railroad, and of course they looked at the actual railroad and not the Underground Railroad to bring silver and to make bullets and things for the Battle of Gettysburg that they were losing. The North was losing, and he suddenly turned it around. And there's an area in the when you drive across the country in one of the lower highways, I'll just say, when you go through a mountain range, people will know what I mean, where the highway loops 90 miles north and then comes 90 miles south. I go, why in the world am I going 180 miles loop when I could do this little road that goes 9 miles straight over this mountain range? How bad can it be? It was sunset when I started to go in. It was sunrise when I came out after 9 miles of the worst, the most incredibly unnerving thing I've ever gone through of seeing these kind of creatures constantly.
Whereabouts is this, Gene, please?
I'll just say a lower highway. The highways in the United States, you have I-70, 60, 40, etc. They go down in number from north to south. They all end at zeros. East to west, sorry. And so one of these highways loops way up. I had to go from, I was being transferred from Hawaii to Charleston, but I had to pick up the submarine in Florida, which was going to go across to Holyloch, Scotland. And so I picked up my car to drive it all the way across the country, and I had a friend that would drive it from Florida back up to Charleston and drop it off there for me, so I'd have it when I got back. And so in this process of driving through this area, I don't want to say because I don't want to endanger people's lives who want to go into this area, because when I got out of there, I was just warped out of my mind. I had zombies and vampires, and at one point I got on E on my gas tank. I pulled into a 7-Eleven. You had to go back, and that was before credit card. I had to go in and put 20 down on the 20 would buy you nothing now, hardly, but 20 on the pump. And I went to the door, and the thing behind the register looked at me with red glowing eyes and smiled. I had thanks. I'm like, God, please make the gas last somehow. I'm on E, but I've got 4 miles to go. I've already spent half a tank. So I got there. So
the cash register was one of these creatures.
Vampires, yeah, a vampire, like Putin's saying. And then when I got to the gas, little cafe truck stop, in other words, at the other end, when the highway came back down to go to Florida, I pulled in and I was just exhausted. I still had to go to Cocoa Beach and I was running out of time. So I pulled in and I walked in, and the waitress comes up to me and she said, is there, what would you like? Would you like some coffee? I go, just leave the whole pot. I was so warped out. She goes, you look like you've been run through the ringer. You've been driving all night. Yeah. She goes, where are you coming from? LA, but the worst part was the last leg. And she looked at me and she goes, where did you drive through? And I told her, and suddenly, a diner in the morning, breakfast, all the truckers are in. It's deafening. Suddenly you could have heard a pin drop. It was like everybody's turning and looking at me, goes, you didn't take the road that I go, yeah, I did. So she goes, she put the coffee down and she spilled my water on me. She goes, I'm sorry, let me clean that up. And in the process, she knocked the salt shaker all over. And somehow the top was loose. I don't know if she sleight of hand took it loose and the salt went on me. And she went and said, I'll get you fresh water and silverware and napkin and place setting and all. She went back and she goes, for you, the best in the house. And she gave me real silverware made out of silver. She handed it to me, so I had to touch it. I did not know at that time what she was doing. I now know she was vetting me to see if I'd been turned. It was holy water.
Yeah.
And it was real silver and salt. I'm like, well, yeah, you're testing me to see if I got hit by a vampire. And then she goes, whatever you want is on the house, the whole breakfast. And then truckers were going by and dropping big bills, 20s, 50s, and even 100 a couple times, and going, son, you must have the hand of God on you. I was like, I had no idea at the time. I just thought I was very fortunate to make it through it all. But it really speaks to what you're saying about these kind of creatures that are out there. They are out there, and it is for real. If you look at the Appalachian Trail and how many people disappear per year on that, and think about, is it just regular everyday people hunting people? We have those types, like the people that we've known, the mass murderers. However, is it also some other kinds of creatures? And I would, from my estimation, say it very well could be. Very likely because of my experiences in that area.
How long, that area that you're talking about, Gene, how long, and I'm assuming, well, maybe it's a two-part question. When would, you might have said it, I've been so immersed in what you're saying. When did that event, that experience for you? How long ago was that?
So let me see. I was reporting on to, that was my last duty on submarines. I went to surface duty after that, shore duty as we call it. Let's see, 1984.
Interesting. 1984. Okay. And to your knowledge, if you were to go through that route again, would you encounter those things, or is maybe some of that been cleaned up through the military maneuvers in the last 4 years, and maybe prior to that, or would that still be kind of considered a hotspot in your understanding?
Well, you'd have to go look at the treaties if they have expired, because at the end of the Civil War, Lincoln did a treaty with the lead, empire, so that they
Really?
could have an area within the U.S. and they would be allocated to that area and not interfered in that area. So, do we now have the right to interfere with them? I don't know.
Interesting. So that's been going on maybe a couple of centuries then, at least.
Yeah, I would
Huh.
say.
And why did they land in America? Were they created in America, or did they come from somewhere else and then set into there?
Oh, it's a very, very ancient thing that happened. It's during the time of Christ. It ties to Judas Iscariot.
Does it?
Mm-hmm. Thus,
Does
the
it go?
silver.
Does it go back Does it go back as far as Cain when he was cursed and couldn't be killed?
Ties into it, but the silver situation ties to Judas Iscariot taking silver to betray Christ, and what God did to him for that.
So was Judas?
Was
So
the
he's
first.
one. Sorry, go on.
Was the first.
Okay. And would it be fair to say Judas is still? Would he still be living?
I would think it's possible. I don't
Okay.
know. Is Christ here? Is he literally on the earth at this time? Not just out in the space somewhere or something. Is he literally walking this earth? Then that could be done. But it would depend on things I don't know.
You're saying if Christ was here right now?
In flesh again. Because he's at the end, he's supposed to return.
Yeah, he is.
We are at the end. Where we are within that end time, I don't know. Because the popes have pulled years and added years to the calendar we have, to the point I know we're not in 2024 in actuality. We're 3 to, I don't know, possibly 8 or more years off, plus or minus. I don't know. I don't even think they know anymore. They've messed with it so badly, and records have been lost, that it's no longer possible to know, as far as I can understand it.
Wow. So a thought I'm having is President Trump. Juan says this to me quite a bit. When I'll call him up, I'll say, "How you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm putting monsters in the boxes." That's one of his phrases. But President Trump has said it a few times at rallies. He's pointed people out. He's talked either directly and said they're monsters, or he's said that the things that they were all in and around was a monster production, but they're no longer in it. But there's one recently that he did, and he's done the show with these guys a few times. So there's a couple of podcasters, the Nelk Boys, and they've been to Mar-a-Lago and interviewed President Trump, and they're just big, they're big popular culture YouTubers. But something that caught my attention just in the last week, maybe last 10 days or so, he said clearly they went and they met him again, and he just said, and they look really quite inconspicuous. They look, they're quite young looking. They don't look the tallest of guys. And he just said, "Yeah, these guys are monsters." And he pointed it out. And he said, "You really, how did he say it?" He said, "These guys are monsters." And he said, "You wouldn't think so, or you'd never think so," something like that. And I was like, and my first thought was he was saying they're part of, the deep state, they're part of the problem. But now you're talking about this, I'm thinking, wow, maybe President Trump is even revealing something even deeper than what we first thought. Because we know the people he points out, not in probably all cases, I hope not in all cases, but when he singles people out and praises them, there's usually double comms with that. But when he said these guys, yeah, they're monsters, and you'd be really surprised, you'd never think it. And yeah, I don't know, maybe he's referring to this. Maybe they're part of this quote unquote bloodline that are in society.
I agree. I'm sure, does know the truth.
I'm sure he does. Wow. Wow. So going back to the time of Christ and with Judas Iscariot, and they had a place in the States, are there other, so the legend or the reality of vampire, of Count Dracula is in Romania, in Transylvania. I've even heard a Christ connection about that, but I don't really know anything other than that. And you've said about the thing with Judas Iscariot and Christ, the time of Christ. Are there other places on the earth, like is the myth or the truth of Transylvania with vampires, is that a similar situation to this area in the United States that you're talking about in terms of vampires?
Yeah. Of course, the U.S. did not exist during the time of the Christ, and all of that. So we're looking, where does he go immediately after that time? Where does Judas go? Romania.
He goes to Romania. Wow. Wow. So Vlad the Impaler, is that Judas Iscariot, or is that part of his lineage?
His lineage.
Wow, this is mind-boggling, Gene. I didn't know this, but it's making so much sense.
Yeah. It's really, where was Vlad the Impaler? Romania.
Yeah.
There are no coincidences. It's all coincidences.
Yes.
Bran Castle, also known as Dracula's Castle, was in Transylvania, Romania, in the 14th century fortress, was, in the home of Vlad. So
I went there a few years ago to visit.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because it's not as imposing as you would necessarily think. I mean, the bus ride it's like this kind of. Have you seen the film Lost Boys with
Yes,
Corey, the two Corys, and it feels a little bit like you're on the bus and it's kind of like really old and these kind of red curtains and dangly trinkets and things. It's like getting you ready for it. Then you get to Bram's Castle and it's all been whitewashed. It doesn't even feel that old. Maybe it's had a bit of a refit and there's it's like a museum as you walk around it, but it's not quite what I thought it. I didn't really know what to expect, but it wasn't quite as ominous as I maybe thought it might be. But wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can we go into? Sorry, go on.
Was actually Poneri Castle.
His castle was what?
Poneri Castle. I don't speak Romanian. It's Poenari. Poneri Castle.
Okay, so they swapped it. So the one that people can go and visit now is not the real castle.
Now the real one is Poneri Castle, which is in the area of Bucharest, near Bucharest. It's in Carol Park. Carol, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. It's Romanian. So maybe it's English. I don't know in that case. Carol is pretty English, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a place that's interesting. So I went there would have been 2016, and which was an interesting year in many ways. It was on the leap year and all these other things, Trump got in power, Brexit, all the celebrity deaths, Leicester City won the Premier League. But I went there that year just for a couple of days and went there one afternoon. But we were traveling, if I remember, traveling north. So we've been in Bucharest and then we went up to Karaman. So that's interesting you're saying that region. So there's a Karaman, it's like a mountain range with a cross on top. Really beautiful place. They have a ski resort. The snow wasn't there, but you could see the dry ski slope. And then we went up to Zanaya, Castle Plej, Bushden, Brasov, and off to the Dracula's castle. Yeah, and it's not that far really from. It was a train ride, and then we took the bus. Wow, so that's where Judas went. What was it then? So can we drill into that a little bit more about, I guess, the curse or what Christ did with Judas because of what he did, and what was, I guess, the outcome is he became the first of the vampires. But what was what was said at the time of his betrayal, and what was the kind of curse, for want of a better phrase, that he was given that made him become that? Because I guess there's a little bit of a gap in most people's knowledge of, okay, people know about 30 pieces of silver, Judas Iscariot, but to jump to being a vampire, there's a little bit of a gap there that people don't really understand or know about.
Yeah, I would require a full decode, but you think of why Romania and what else is we have. They're drawn to areas of power. So we have Buceg Mountain and that massive complex that ties by tunnel systems all the way to the Giza Plateau and the Pyramid of Giza, and comes up into the those tunnels literally come up underneath the Sphinx, which is where the library is. And so you have the Sphinx in Bucegi, and then you have the Sphinx in Giza Plateau and all of those tunnel systems from Giza. And then that then ties to Jerusalem. We're going back to the tie to Jerusalem and Syria and all of this. And we have what happened with Iraq when the U.S. invaded in Desert Storm, trying to get the Stargate system. And he escaped with a dial-up device to Syria, through tunnels to Syria. You see how everything's getting interconnected, and we have the tunnel system that goes from the Vatican through Albania and down into Jerusalem. So everything is all getting interconnected now, and all of these things are coming together. It's how the end time works, is everything that, all of the power and all of the gold and all of it is coming out in front of everything, and it's all interconnected. That's why people say I do these huge, like round circles, they get lost. But it's because everything is interconnected.
Yeah. Wow. Talking about the power of Romania, then, is there, talking of other podcasters, so you've got the Nelk Boys, and then you've got the Tate Brothers, and they're English, but they've decided to live out in Romania, and they were saying, well, we live here because it's a better, it's a less hassle system. And then they got reported as being arrested for a few months. Whether that was real or not, I don't know, but that's the narrative that is out in the public. But they reside in Romania. Is there, to your knowledge, any reason that they would be doing that, in terms of, because it's this place of power?
Yeah, because you have the Bucegi Mountain Complex, where that viewing system and all that holographic 3D viewing system, you can read, you literally actually go there. When you're in that, the person, Cinnabar, I think was the name of the person or something, or it's in the Cinnabar books at least, but he actually went back to the time of Christ, and Christ looked at him, because he's there in a soul body, and said he'd been waiting for him, and he gave him information for this time. And we look where else. There's two main tunnel systems from Bucegi. One goes to Giza Plateau. The other one goes to Tibet, which is one of the entrances to Inner Earth. That goes to the Valley of the Moon, which they talk about in Lost Horizons, which is one of the entrances into the center of the Earth. It's the tunnel system that goes all the way to the center of Earth. It's in Tibet, and they show that in the movie Lost Horizons, a lot of which has been lost, and they've recovered what they can and remastered it, so you can see a lot of the information. But it's an area in the Tibetan plateau, or not plateau, but the mountains, the largest mountains on Earth, and you go and look at that, and it's kind of tropical-like, because it's tied to the Inner Earth. And these tunnel systems that go everywhere, I mean, they connect to these key areas. And so you have the sphinxes at all these areas too. So, you look at the undiscovered tunnels linking the sphinxes, undiscovered quote,
Yeah.
Like the Sphinx and Babel and all of these other things. So it's just really, really fascinating to watch now, as everything rolls out, how all of these things are tied together. And they also tie through ley lines and all of these monoliths that are appearing, and all of these things all happening at the same time. We're seeing everything coming out. All of it is tying together and coming out in front of the whole world. And there's even monasteries and mysteries that are hidden in the Bechagi Mountains um, that tie to the Carpathian Mountains, secret tunnels all over the place, the Bechagi Mountain Hall of Records. So, you know, those books are called Transylvania Sunrise. If people want to look them up, our Romanian coordinator for the Blessed for Service, there's one that's only in Romanian. We'll have that up as she's working on getting those all done to be able to translate those for people.
Wow. In terms of the tunnels, and particularly the quote unquote the ancient tunnels, did they have, were they tunnels that people would just walk and do a pilgrimage, you know, through the tunnels that would take them weeks and months to get places, or did they back then have technology that could transport them very quickly to get to these other locations? So if you're in Romania and you go back to the Giza Plateau, or if you go to Tibet, I guess it's some form of technology that created the tunnels in the first place. Is there also an equal technology that was available, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago that could transport people back and forth?
The tunnels have still, even way back then, you have Stargate systems and portal systems. Those existed. Okay. Even the ancient Egyptians knew how to do this. So there's these hidden technologies. You can see some of it being used, like when they grabbed Jacques de Molay on Friday the 13th. They grabbed all of the Knights Templar as the ships came into the docks throughout all of Europe within hours. How in that time of Jacques de Molay do they have the communication ability? And he was coming back, you know, believed to be carrying one of the crystal skulls, which was one the Cabal did not have, which is the crystal skull of the Carthaginians, and so from Carthage. And so it's just called Carthaginian. I don't know why they call it Carthaginian. It's Carthage, but it is what it is. So these crystal skulls are of immense ability and power, and they wanted to have them all. They still don't have them all. I do know of somebody who had one. I don't know who he gave it to. That person's no longer alive. But these, again, everything's coming out. So you have the crystal skulls coming into, we had that movie about crystal skulls by
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones, the Tomb Raider, not Tomb Raider, sorry, Indiana Jones and all of the movies he's had.
Yeah. Wow. And so with the portals, so the portal was the Stargates was the mode of transport. Are there instances where you could have Stargates and people wouldn't? You didn't even need a tunnel. You could just go from point A to point B through the Stargate on a planet.
Of course.
Okay. And then, with that being said, what would be the point for the tunnel itself?
For those that the tunnel goes to many destinations as it goes. So if you don't want to go from point A to Z right away, you've got destinations in between that the tunnel goes to.
Okay. So the tunnel could physically be a tunnel, and people could use it in a traditional way, i.e. mechanically, physically moving through that, and they could take detours and stop and do whatever they need to. But then you can jump and speed up via the Stargates.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Something that Ariel did maybe a month ago, you probably saw it, Gene. He talked about the Beatles, the music group, the Beatles, and the cassette tape. And he gave this example of someone who had time traveled. They'd gone into a different dimension and they'd ended up in a new place.
He was actually rescued. He fell and hurt himself. And a person from a parallel Earth on a different timeline rescued him, took him back to his Earth. And the Beatles were still together, all alive, producing music. And he pirated a cassette tape and brought it back.
That's it. You've remembered it and described it far more eloquently than I did. So in terms of that, so that got me thinking about So we're all sharing this existence together, but there's multi dimensions, there's multi-universes, parallel timelines. As we move forward and we go into this ascension, and you've mentioned some people that just don't make it, won't wake up, they won't make it. As we go into these dimensions of a reality and other universes, will we get to the point where we can choose the universe that we want to occupy and be in? So, for example, say we're in a beautiful part of the world, and we maybe have neighbors or other people in the community around us that maybe aren't on the same frequency as ourselves. And they're okay, but they just do their things, and it can kind of become a bit of an inconvenience or whatever. But would we get to the point where we can actually say, okay, I love this version of this reality, but I'd like an upgrade of it. I'd like it to be slightly different, and I'd like to just be around people that are totally on my frequency, friends and family, close loved ones that are all on the same page, as opposed to having to interact with others that just, for want of a better word, stink the place out because of their vibration. They just don't get it, which is what a lot of us are facing right now. We're in this world, but we feel we're in the world, but not of it. That's what a lot of us feel. So a lot of the audience will feel that. I feel that. I'm sure you must feel that probably a lot of the time. But would we get to the point where we can actually say, okay, we're very happy with this reality, but we'd like to have an upgraded, polished version where we don't have to interact or deal with the mundane of the lower vibrations of dimensions?
Well, what is occurring now is all of the timelines are going into two lines only. They're essentially there now. We're very close to the time where there's only two, which is the A line and the G line. That's it. Because once you go through the CME, which is kind of like a peduncle, the peduncle's that narrow part in an hourglass where all the sand has to pass through. In this case, only two possibilities can go through that. One is which in service to God, and uttermost in a very high vibration of everybody functioning kindly, compassionately. Swear the Shaolin Messrs.
Yeah.
Yi was saying. Many can't do it because they can't function there. And many won't, and they don't want to. So they don't or can't or won't function like that. And so in this case, what we're looking at is those people that can and do and will and have chosen to be kind and considerate and respectful and truthful and honest and do the best they can do and not hold people responsible for their choices. Your choices are yours. You bear the responsibility of the outcome because you're the one that chose. Whether somebody advised you or not is not really relevant. You still have choice. You're the one that chose to go move somewhere, or you're the one that chose to listen and believe something, or whatever. That's why that said, be careful who you follow, because in that it's a warning to follow the people that resonate with you, because in this time, the people that resonate, that are kind and compassionate and loving and not throwing each other under the tank, not even a bus anymore, and not calling this person and that person and one after another. It's calling the information out, but not calling the people. Even, I talked about a few today, but I don't sit there and say they're absolutely evil. I say they're doing these things. Anybody can come back through the gift of Christ. Anybody, any creature, anybody at all. If you're a sentient being that can make choice, that choice can be made. And you have time, but you don't have a lot. And so what we're seeing is surrounding yourself with good people and that make good choices, and they're kind and compassionate, but take responsibility and don't blame you. Like, it's your fault. It's not anybody but yourself that is, and it's not a matter of fault anyway. It's a matter of what you choose to experience. So do you choose to experience a world without all of this child trafficking, without this? Then become that in the choices you make, in the thoughts and feelings and emotions, in the words you speak, and what you do. Become that. I've even been working on myself very hard lately to try to resonate better with this myself, because realizing the time we're in is coming down to be very careful of what I say to whom, and even within my close-knit groups of people. Are they ready to hear certain things? Is it above and beyond? It's again back to where the KGB guy said, I meet people out in public and you meet somebody and they cannot understand the truth. You could literally put it in front of them. There are people, like Flat Earth. Let's give an example that is incredibly insane to me. That it doesn't matter if you prove it to them. You absolutely show them proof. Like you're watching the sun go down, and then you're seeing the bottom of planes reflecting the sun above you. But the sun's below the horizon. If it's flat, it's not going to be on the bottom of the plane. They say, well, it's because the plane's pitched up. What if the plane's heading away from the sun and you still see it on the bottom of the plane? Can't be. It can't be. It's absolutely impossible. And it doesn't matter how low the sun is over the earth or whatever. And why is the sun not getting smaller and smaller and smaller as it's going farther and farther away if it's staying at the same altitude? There's things, it doesn't matter what you show. Like I was on Nino's platform and they wanted me to debate this flat earth. I go, it doesn't matter what you show them, what you explain to them, what you prove to them. I could literally take them in space and show them. Somebody could do that. And they're going to go, no, you hypnotized me, or you put me under some kind of something, a hallucinogenic drug or something. It doesn't, it's literally what the KGB said. That guy, he said you're going to have to kick him in the, in the jewels to make crush them. They're going to wake up. So you have to put things that they can hear, and respect them, and give them things. So recently, when I'm out talking to people, I will give them things that I know, based on that they're shopping or there's something, or they're at some store and I see them going into the pharmaceutical section, and there was a lady. I was in a store and her arm was constantly tremoring. I went to get a zipper pull, a whole bunch of new zipper pulls to fix my down jackets, and down, since we're in winter and the pulls of the jacket keeps coming open, and you can do a temporary fix by squeezing it with needle nose pliers, but that's only temporary and it'll spread again. So now mine are spreading again. So I was getting a big pack of zipper pulls, and you can cut the little tab at the top off and then put a new zipper pull on and then sew it, and then put a little bit of nylon dripping on it, and it'll seal it so the zipper pull can't come off. And this lady was constantly tremoring. I said, if you go downtown, there's a Chinese school, Chinese medicine school. You can go in the evenings. They have the patients, or not the patients, the student clinics where they take patients for free. And you can get treatments for free. And you want to look into things, they can diagnose you and get herbs and everything. And there's many, many things. She goes, well, it's many, many different things going on. Yeah, they can do many, many things. There's other things besides the Western pharmaceutical stuff. There's many things that'll actually help bring your energies and things back up. If the liver, that's partly liver, that's partly a few other things, but they can help you a lot. And she's, it did help her, and she was very interested in taking the information down. So it's to give people information where their brains are not so washed they can't hear it, to respect them, to help them along the way. Now she sees she does that. She sees, well, there are alternatives to this big pharma, which they believe is the thing. That's the thing. But she's tried everything. She said she tried everything. She'd given up. So I gave her a way to get hope back in her life, to not having shaking all the time, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's miserable, something, a way out of the misery. And then when that little piece of ray of sunlight comes through, of truth, of a real way to help yourself, what else can now open that crack? You're opening a crack where see where their mind can go to help them while there's time. But be respectful and kind, and just a little bit of thing. It was just that little bit of thing, and I still had more time, and I just talked about the weather and things like that. No, not unusual things about the weather, like my understanding of the weather. Oh, well, it's the chemtrail. Just the regular, it's cold, and, the storm's coming in, and, it's all that kind of, it's going to snow, that kind of thing. So just regular conversation. And, I was in the DMV, and it was like a tomb in there. I go, who died here? It's like, and then, I started a conversation, and then pretty soon everybody's laughing and having a good time. And again, at that point, you got people out of that realm of not talking to others, not sharing, not caring, where they're sharing and laughing and having a good time. Now you've lightened their mind to where you can share a little bit of something see what their interests are, and something small, not something huge that makes them go, oh, that's freaking impossible. Certainly not the orange man. No, don't go into the orange man. TDS syndrome. Oh no. Here comes TDS syndrome. No, I don't want to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. So
Orange man in numbers is 88. Trump. Orange is 60. Man is 28. Added together is 88 Trumps. It's all coded. Yeah. How long do you think? So you said there's going through the egg timer. You've got, did you say A and G timelines? Is that what you said, Gene?
Yeah, the Arma line, the Book of Arma, you know what I mean? Book of Revelations talks about that, the last war.
Okay.
Where this is seared by fire, and the sun and the moon turn blood. The sky goes black as sackcloth, and the moon turns blood red. It's what happens when you go into a photon belt, and the sun goes out, and then it goes super. It has a CME, it has a super ejection, coronal mass, full coronal mass ejection. It's the perfect description of it. And then this wave of fire hits the earth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the sun, if you understand what the sun really is, which isn't what they're telling you, how does the sun really do what it does? So, that goes into the electric universe. People can research that and understand that the sun is primarily not a nuclear furnace. It's actually it's Birkeland currents that create the energy the sun uses. And it's a harmonic oscillator. It's a resonant device. And it's vibrating now already at 4th and 5th density. It's already split into 2 suns. There's the 4th, 5th density sun that's in a higher density or a greater density. And then there's the 3rd density sun, which is the yellow sun. And so, it's to understand how the sun is working and how creation works. And, again, it's not dimension, because dimensions are height, width, depth, and time, 2 dimensions of time. And so, and then you have a physical dimension of height, width, and depth, one that goes inwards to the singularity that's within everything, which creates quantum entanglement. So we're in 6 dimensions on 3rd density. And then as you increase the amount of information and light, and you go get more dense. So you jump to the next octave of density by going to 4th density. And you have all the dimensions we have, and you pick up 2 more. And then you go to 5th density, and you pick up 3 more at 4th and 2 more at 5th. And so you have different dimensions while you're changing density. You can't say 4th dimension, 5th dimension, because the dimensions are delineated by the density, not the other way around.
Oh. And then the G line what's that?
God's line, the line that people are doing their very best to be in service to God's creation, each other, and everything, in the highest interest of everything everywhere. The one and only God of all creation is everything.
So the God line is a peaceful transition, and the
Yes.
A line, the Armageddon line, is a destructive one.
Violent and destructive, and you have a limited time frame, but until all life comes to an end on the 3rd density Earth.
Wow. Talking of, you said we haven't got much time. In your feeling and understanding, estimation, what do you think in terms of the length of time that we have until we get to that point of the split, where some will go to the God's timeline and some will go to the A timeline?
Well, people talk about, the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, whatever. Okay, the various it's within the generation we are now in. I would say it's most likely, I think extremely likely in my understanding, within this generation. But
Okay.
Again, I can't say very accurately to a date or a year, because the years have been so messed with in the calendar.
Yeah. So generation, thinking kind of generation, a 20 year?
Generations, I guess, are somewhere between 20 and 30 years. I don't know. It depends on how you delineate a generation.
Okay. Wow. What was that gentleman's name I think his name was Bill, that he did a piece with Kerry Cassidy, and it's been edited into many forms and versions. But he talked about the singularity. Said, however they look at it, it's coming to this point, and you can't stop it. What was his name? Bill. I think his name was Bill.
Not sure who you're referencing. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Singularity of AI becoming absolutely aware and intelligent like we are. Is that what singularity you're referring to, or the singularity to me?
I think it was the God. It was the good singularity. It was. I think he used the word singularity. I might be misquoting him, but he was describing this ultimate thing in the cosmos, that we get to this juncture where things, the outcome is the good outcome is achieved, and nothing can stop it.
Yeah. And I want to remind people that what you choose to believe as absolutely true for you will be true. It's like you look at when Captain Cook first went to the Hawaiian Islands. They even took, this is what I said, you can't prove anything to anybody who cannot believe it. They even took the native Hawaiians on the ships. They went into catatonic shock because in their mind you could not build something that big out of wood. All they had were dugout canoes. One piece from one tree. That's it. They had no way to have a boat, a ship made out of wood that big. But the shaman could see the ripples. So later on, the shaman, constantly meditating or remote viewing it, saw it, and within the time he came back again, then shortly all the other people could see it, because the people who are at the cutting edge of where the truth is, that are viewing it constantly and contemplating it at a deep, deep level, to let go of the box their head's in, and it's this cognitive dissonance sets in. And so if you are absolute that the Arma line, I'll just go ahead and say it, the Armageddon line is the only line. There is no Nasara. There is nothing but this burn and this in war, and we're in that time, and everything's going to burn, and everything's. Then that is, if that's absolute for you, then that is absolute for you. That is your choice. You're asking God for you to experience, and everybody that resonates with you will go to that. And what does that look like? That looks like attacking everybody everywhere, because that's what Armageddon is. That's what you're looking of, everybody turning on everybody. You can't trust anybody. You can't do anything. Everything's burning and on fire, and the dead are rising from the ground. And it is literally, the undergrowth merging with the surface, where everything comes together, and all of this death and destruction. It is horrific beyond comprehension. And you're going to come to Christ during that time? Wow. Man, you choose a hard path, but that's a choice. And that choice is a possible choice. It doesn't mean it's the only choice, because God is not like that. God is about love and not making you suffer beyond comprehension. So God offers those that want to be loving and kind and considerate, and not sitting there tearing each other down, their fellow Christians or fellow persons. If they don't fit with what you understand to be the truth, let them go. For those people that I knew years ago or whatever ago that don't want to, even my own sister doesn't want to, hear Orange Man is just like hand in my face. I love her. I still stay in communication because, like I did with my parents to the end. Because what does it say in the scriptures? Honor thy mother and thy father. And that for me means my entire family. You don't cut them off because they don't see things the way you are. But I honor and respect their choices. And I only want, if they came to me in my mother and father's case, to understand where I was. After they saw how I was for decades, they wanted to understand it, because they couldn't understand how I could be constantly forgiving people that are constantly messing me over. And I explained it. And then they said, how do I become the way you are? And I explained how to do that. And at the end, they did do it. And so then everything from then on, for all of the rest of their experience in this creation that's billions and trillions of years to go, will be now different. It enabled them to make a choice to not go there to not experience that, to not have to go rise from the grave and walking around like a zombie, all of that stuff, no longer necessary. So it's to understand that there are two choices, not one. God does not give you, this is the only one, and you got to suffer like insanely terribly. No, God is about love. And if you're going to come and be as loving and as good of a person you can be, as I know you are, Tom, and all of the 17, all of the 16 other hosts are the same. On the envisioning, we did the freedom envisioning. Mm-hmm. What is that envisioning about? Freedom. Mm-hmm. And what does Galatians 1:2 say? Freedom. Through the gift of Christ, we are free, but not to take the yoke of slavery again. It says it. So we were offered a way to not take the slavery yoke again. If you want to choose to do that, that's up to you. You believe there's no way out of it, then it's so. But if you absolutely know that's not true, which I do, then it's not so. And, you can make that choice, and that choice is out there, and it's for us to offer people those choices while there's some time to do our best.
Exactly. Thank you, Gene. You talked about, so there's a quote I saw recently from an actor, from Timothy Chalamet. He actually plays a character called Tom in Interstellar. He's a younger man in that. He's now an adult, but he's a teenager in the film because it came out in 2014, so about 10 years ago, yeah. But I saw this quote of his just yesterday, and he says, life is coming from you, not at you. And it makes me think of those things you've just discussed in terms of choosing timelines. Like if people are adamant and they want to choose the A line and all that goes with that, then that's what they're going to get. But if you want to choose the God line, again, that's what you're going to get. That's what you get blessed with, and because we're projecting it, it's coming from us. So I wanted to bring that up during the show, but then when you talked about what you just spoken about, it seems to tie in nicely, and coming from an actor, from Interstellar. We talked you mentioned about the railroad and the underground element, and I was asking about the monsters, etc. One thought that came to my mind was the Ingersoll Lockwood books, the time travel series about Baron Trump, and one of them is Baron Trump's Amazing Underground Journey. I haven't actually read the books, but I like to kind of let people know that they're, be aware of it. I don't know if you've studied them at all, Gene, but I wonder if you've got any knowledge about the underground journey that Baron Trump, the character of Baron Trump, the time traveler, which seems like it was written about 100 years ago, is talking about. I'm assuming there must be some kind of revelation or connection with the DUMs and the tunnels and the network of all this transportation that humans on the surface nowadays don't really know about, but it's been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yes. There are interconnections that are so vast. You look at the watch, and there's so much information in there. It's because it's a large amount of information. It would take several decodes to actually go through all of the details. It's so vast, but it is a very important book to read, and and the whole group. There's a series of books tied to that are important to understand.
Do we have any knowledge on who Ingersoll Lockwood is or was? I guess I should say is.
Yeah, I haven't been able to research that. It would be interesting to see who that is.
Okay. Yeah. I need to get those books. They've been part of this framework of everything that's been going on, but I should actually take the time to get them and read them. It's interesting how Ivanka, she did some tweets about.
I pulled it up on Duck here. Ingersoll Lockwood was a U.S. lawyer and writer from 1841 to 1918. He wrote children's books He also including the Baron Trump novels, plural, in which a dystopian kind of novel series, The Last President, a play of several nonfiction works. So that's just what I can get here. He kind of looks a lot like Mark Twain looking at him here, but
I've seen pictures of him. He does look quite a character. And the interesting thing about it is with the numbers. So Ivanka, she did a series of photographs, I think on Twitter and Instagram, or one or t'other, of her in Paris and doing some quite deliberate photographs. And there's a book out there that looks a bit like Around the World in 80 Days, but it's another book with two women doing this race around the world. And the character that Ivanka looks like in these pictures, that even her coat and everything is almost identical, except Ivanka's got blonde hair, but one of the characters in the other book has got brunette hair, dark hair. But it's interesting how all that ties in. And the thing with the numbers with Baron Trump, so Baron Trump, who's Donald's son now, his numbers, his name is BARRON, and then Trump. That comes to 156 in numbers, which comes to 33. Tesla lived on the 33rd floor in the Tesla building, the New Yorker on 8th Avenue. 8th Avenue is 125 time travel. But Baron Trump in the book series is with one R, and that comes to 138, which actually comes to Donald Trump. And they talk about this Baron Trump has a mentor in New York and it's called Don. And so, it seems like it's Baron Trump being referenced to Donald Trump, but the spelling of the two names could have an overlap, and it could actually be Donald Trump himself, described as, or disguised as Baron Trump. One thought with this, Gene, is the thing of future selves sharing information, sharing decodes, helping us decode things in the present. And I've been thinking quite a bit about that in recent days. Christopher Nolan just won the Academy Award for the Oscars, and it'd be interesting to see if that's maybe the last set of Oscars that we see in that format. Time will tell, but maybe, because he's been the elephant in the room. I think he's for sure a white hat director, and they never gave him the awards, but they gave him this one in 2024. But his film in 2020, Tenet, talked about lockdowns, talked about child's play, it talked about gold being moved around in aeroplanes, all the people wearing masks. But he introduced this concept of not time travel, but time inversion, time reversal, and the theme of being able to complete a task, a mission, maybe many years from now, and it looping back on ourselves. And it's got me thinking about maybe some of it. You mentioned, the 17 of us that were on the Blessed for Service show before Christmas, and others that are doing similar work. I wonder if, and the reason we felt, called to do this is like 2020. I just felt compelled. I got the gift of numbers, and I had to speak up. I didn't know it would get to this, but I just had to say something. And I'm like, well, where are the numbers coming from? Where did I get this from? And I'm thinking maybe with yourself, where did you get your insights from? And I wonder if there is an element of perhaps a future version of ourselves helping us and leaving this trail of breadcrumbs or Easter eggs or information that we can use in the present, but somehow, and I don't fully understand it, it's more like a feeling of it. I don't understand all the mechanics of it, but a future self guiding us at this point and juncture in time for whatever reason. Why are we selected? Why are we chosen? Why are we called to do what we do right now? And I do think we're getting, for me, I feel like I'm being guided from angelics, from relatives that have passed on. But I also feel that there could be the possibility that some version of myself from the future is guiding me in my day-to-day mission that I'm doing now. And I feel that maybe others, maybe yourself, resonate with that thought. You may have a whole plethora of knowledge on that. I don't know. That's my feeling. That's my question.
So, in actuality, for me, it's your higher self all the way up, your soul
Okay.
self, your soul that's guiding you,
Yeah.
along with angelics and others, and God if you're listening. And then it goes into a lot of things about that self is not limited by time at all. So you can see into the future, have knowledge of things coming. If somebody says an idea, let's do this or let's do that, I immediately see how that will affect the timeline and what the future will look like on that choice. If you do this, like you say, I'm going to move to, what do you think, Gene, if I were to move to Madrid? I can see how that would change. And I go, where in Madrid? So I can localize it. Then, okay, and do you have children and how that would affect and where you're going to buy your home and where your children are going to go to school and what kind of work you're going to do there. You can see as that is putting a more definitive information, how that selects of all the timelines of you going to Madrid. We're now centralizing it into one more and more narrow choices of how that will look. And so the same thing you're seeing with the Ingersoll Lockwood, where they're looking at how it would be if this. So you look at the travels and adventures of Little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulger, and then also the extraordinary experiences of Little Captain Doblecop and Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey, 1900 of the last president, and I'm actually researched this. There's actually a website just now while you're talking, IngersollLockwood.com, in which it's all patriots, all, I think, retired military actually, that have put together this, all of the writings, but it's also a complete website. And so they said that, they have a series of products and things. They have the U.S. Space Force's hiring symbol. All products and services we invest and support are made in America with pride. And they talk about criminal hacking and anything like that. They talk about their history, their namesake, Ingersoll Lockwood, and that they invest, fund, and license and develop and sell next generation technologies. It's veteran owned. Again, like I said, I was pretty sure it was veterans. And then they talk about how they work. And it's in a fascinating website. Yeah, and it's IngersollLockwood.com. And then they have all of the books of Ingersoll Lockwood. And then if you go into their insights, they're looking at defending and extending life, clean H2O technology, in other words, water technology, like I was talking about. Toyota and Tesla are now looking into clean and nearly limitless energy supply systems, next generation technology, faster, more efficient, quantum encryption and cyber defense, secure communications, and education on American history and values, which is going back to what the KGB said, is the guy was saying, is you destroy the values of the people. You educate why it takes 20 to 30 years to destroy a country. And it's been so well done in the United States. We're 2 or 3 generations in now, where the American people no longer have their American patriotic values of pride in their country, or Christian, or any of those other values that the United States was founded on. They're completely gone. It's like Colonel McGregor was saying and Scott Ritter are saying, if we were to try to put boots on the ground in Ukraine against the Russian people, you're clueless, aren't you? Because the average American right now that's of a military age of serving in the military aren't capable of it. In the vast majority of the young men and women are not really capable. They think working hard is sitting in their basement playing video games, basically living in their parents' home, and working 8 or 9 hours doing digital stuff, which there's a call for that with the drones and all of that. But when you get to them to actually do hard work, like on a ship at sea, where you're working, they think that working a 12-hour day or a 15-hour day or a 16-hour day is hard. Yeah, it's hard. But you get up in rank in the, like in submarines, like I did. When you get higher rank, I had 3 hours of sleep a week. A week. All the rest was work. All of it. And I got 3 hours because they, by law, have to give me 20 minutes a day to eat. So I would skip 7 meals and 7 days of eating in a row, eat every 8th day, so that I could get 20 minutes sleep. And that was the majority of my sleep. The rest, I got 2 or 3 minutes here. They have no idea of what really, really seriously working, I mean, hard beyond what most people can even, it was shown to me when I went to retire. And there was a civilian that was indoctrinating, ridiculous woman, indoctrinating us to how to adapt to civilian life. And she was clueless because she made a statement to all of us. And you're talking all submarine people that are retiring 20, 21 and a half years, 15, 18, 20 years at sea, in my case, 12 years underwater, not alone the sea time. And she's saying it's not fair. I'm getting half my pay for the rest of my life. First of all, I don't get half of all of the money I got paid. I don't get sub pay, sea pay, hazardous duty pay, all of the others. All I get is half my base pay. It's nowhere near what I used to make. But I said, you're looking in the wrong place, first of all. Look at Congress. They get all of it for one term. Not only that, if you were to take how many hours you will work, if you work from 18 to 65, I have already tripled you in 20 years. I have more than tripled the amount of time. I mean, actually working on my feet, on the job, working my hindsight off. Not just sitting there, just sitting down, doing stuff. I'm talking really, really hard work. And it's just where it got, especially when you're at that higher rank, it got to the point where if I make a wrong decision, it could mean 2 submarines get destroyed. We're being followed by a Charlie, and I figure this out, and we're getting in the point of clearing baffles, and I figure out if I don't catch they're doing a crazy Ivan, both submarines are gone. We collide, and you have a nuclear incident with 2 nuclear submarines on the bottom of the Atlantic or the Med. Oh my goodness, are retrievable too. Holy smoke, what an event that would be. So, you're looking at a level of responsibility and a level of work that this generation, I don't see the majority of the young men and women I meet have the capacity to get to that point in 10 or 20 years to be able to do that. They're so, again, it's this, what Ariel was posting, to have others risk themselves, but they are so into comfort that they do not comprehend what it's like to really, really have to work hard. And I mean, really put your life on the line and put everything you are into it day after day after day without one day off for 2 years at sea straight. I've been at sea for 2 years straight on one submarine. We pulled in for a few hours to load stores. You're not resting, you're loading stores. You're loading 90 days, stacking cans on the deck till you have to bend to walk down the passageways. You have to bend over because it's so deep. I mean, incredibly hard work, and it's just where we are today with the dumbing down of the American people and the softening up of the value systems of the farming and the ranchers and the cowboy kind of patriot, the way the U.S. was, is gone. The neocons have destroyed the value system, like Trump or Putin was saying, who was one of the alliance, that the American people, there is still a core of American people that have that value system, and they have families that have raised their children well, where they work hard. The children are raised on farms and ranches and in mechanics and all this, but the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education in the Western world doesn't exist. It's mostly gone. Why is it that Russia, it's now been admitted in articles by Western media, they can out-manufacture by over 3 times in arms, in ammunition, in tanks, in everything, the entire Western world combined by over 3 times. They're the strongest military by over 3 times on Earth. And you're going to send boots on the ground into Ukraine? You're out of your mind, because they will destroy all of the Western military. They will not just denazi Ukraine. They will de-Nazi and demilitarize and deindustrialize the entire Western world. What we just saw happen in Germany with all of their industry going to China and going to India and going to places where they can get it cheap without the strong regulations, they're gone. Their factories are still standing. The factories here, where I grew up, there were steel mills and all of, you don't have those. Those are torn down now. They're gone. The big, huge rubber plants like Gates Rubber and all these, they're gone. Those are townhouses there now. All of these huge industries that the United States had for World War II to be able to gear up to do World War II, in the matter of a few weeks, they don't exist. We don't have them. They're bringing people back from retirement to build Patriot missile systems. It's, to build the Stinger missiles. They don't have the knowledge in this generation anymore. It is gone. The knowledge of how to do these things is gone. The ability to do them is gone. It's an entirely different, these generations now are an entirely different people. They have destroyed the values and the people themselves. The people themselves, I'm not saying it's 100% or even above 80%, but it's a large percentage of young men and women that really do not understand life. They really do not have values and respect for each other, for themselves even. They're doing things to their bodies and doing things, all this gender identity stuff and all of this stuff. They're just giving God the middle finger. They're doing things of destroying their body that God gave them in ways that I could not have ever believed when I was young growing up would be even they don't push back on the school system at all for offering these ideas up. It's blatant for generations, the school system, and the parents don't get involved in what's going on in the school systems, in the churches too. You go to church, I don't go, because you listen to the pushing the agenda during the 19 situation and all that, through the church, through the school. What a bunch of garbage. And the parents aren't getting involved. They take their children there. My church is God in nature, which is where God resides, and within me. Like the Shaolin said, you can feel it within yourself. So, to have values to get your children into martial arts is one way. And I mean the real thing. I don't mean some dojo, you get a black belt in 3 years. Not possible. You're not a black belt and 8 years old in 3 years, or you're even at 30 years old. The very fastest I could imagine it being done in the real thing is 8 years. If you really put work in on it every single day, 2-3 hours every day, like I did at sea even, I would be sitting in stances with my leg up on a machine to stretch, all kinds of doing push-ups, hanging upside down, doing setups when I come down the ladders, using my time as efficiently as I could. I was training every single day, even when I'm at sea for 2 years. I had a board and I'd be punching the board because I broke the rail for loading the gimbal assembly up a level missile compartment. Captain, stop busting my submarine. It's like, okay, I won't hit your submarine anymore. So it's like, after 2 years of pounding it, got crystalline fracture line and broke. It's like, oh well. So I got a board. But it's like, to have that kind of dedication and things, they're addicts. The younger generation are addicts. They're addicted to pleasure, whether it's gaming or hooky smoky stuff or whatever it is. They no longer have a strong sense of values, a respect for each other and for their own body. So sorry to soapbox, but it's just so sad and tragic for me to see. And every once in a while, like when I was in the DMV, that's why everybody started talking and laughing. There was a African American couple and this young girl that was probably 3 years old looking up at me. She's really cute. Look, I couldn't help myself. I go, "Hi, young lady. What's your name?" She didn't say a word. I said, "Oh, I see your parents have raised you well, not to talk to strangers." And everybody started talking and laughing. But it was just rare to see. Like in my banking institution, I had a guy with he stopped at the doors and before the doors opened, and he hugged his son to see the love, real love, and then his son, talked a little bit while they're in line, and he was talking about sharing it, what his son's doing in school and getting involved. And I go, they were in line behind me when they got in, and I said to the young man, the son, "You should be very glad that you have such a good father that loves you and is instilling values that will stand in your stead all your life. You're going to be a fine young man because you have a true father. You have a true man as your father who is instilling values in you that will be the core of who you are all your lifetime." And you could see the father's chest come out because he had a right to be proud of himself. He's raising a fine young man. How often do you see that the kids aren't running rampant all over the place, yelling and screaming and knocking stuff over and all of this? That's an exception where you see fine children being raised. They're fine children because they're being raised by parents with true values. So that's my soapbox. I have to do it. I'm sorry, but I have to. It's just, I have to say what it is. It's my nature. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Gene, and thank you for your soapbox. It's necessary. I guess I'm kind of in the middle generation of I can remember some of the things you've discussed, and I can see what's going on now. And I guess I'm in that kind of middle category, and I can relate. And I have to take my hat off to you for the work you did on the submarine, and the number of hours you worked. That made my eyes water listening to that. I mean, I don't know how. I guess when necessity is the mother of all invention, and you had to do that. But to live on 3 hours sleep a week, I don't know how you did that. So thank you. Yeah, that's incredible.
You develop techniques like never stopping when you're walking. You walk in little circles. I was topside watch early in my career. We were in the dry dock in Japan, in Yokosuka. And I got to the end and I stopped to turn around and I almost fell over the side. It was like 3 a.m. I'm like, oh no, do a little tight circle. Then I learned to take a needle and bury it in the palm of my hand up into the bone and just make it hurt so much that I would stay awake. Another thing, and I used to drink 3 to 4 pots of coffee a day to the point I didn't realize, but I poisoned myself. I got to the point I had migraines to where I'd go blind and deaf, and I didn't realize it when I got retired and I quit drinking coffee because I don't really like it, and I just needed the caffeine. And then I used my GI Bill to go get working on an engineering degree with it, and during finals, I went into the cafeteria and got a cup of coffee because I was doing those kind of hours again. And I didn't even make it to the door of the cafeteria. 2 minutes, drank the coffee, and I had the blinding lights and ringing. And it's like, oh, it was the coffee. So lots of coffee, lots of standing up. Part of it helped with my martial arts of being able, instead of sitting down on a chair, I would sit in a kippadashi, a horse stance, or a zakusudashi, like a samurai sword stance, or these different stances for 12 hours straight on watch, instead of sitting down. Or then I would alternate with my left foot up over my head on top of a piece of gear, standing on one foot, even on the surface, if we're on the surface and the ship is moving all over the place. So I have to exercise balance and all kinds of things. So you learn techniques to do it and all kinds of things. Plus, the demands on your mind are so vast, you don't get bored normally because, like, you know, the amount of things you're having to keep track and displays and people, levels of people, when you're at high rank and talking to like 8 or 9 or 10 people and having 2 different headsets, one on your left ear, one on your right ear, you know, it's so demanding. You normally don't just get tired. There's times on SSBNs when you're trying to stay away out in the middle of nowhere from everybody just to launch missiles. It can get incredibly boring, and then it gets tough. And so I use those techniques of martial arts stances and, you know, dynamic tension. My upper body and my legs were massive because I'd sit there and do dynamic tension for an hour or two with this, you know, in this stance and then this stance and then, you know. So you learn all kinds that actually techniques that help get you stronger and healthier at the same time. So it's actually in some ways advantageous. Of course, the coffee isn't advantageous, as I found out the hard way, but the rest was. And it is, you know, a unique experience. That's why Brothers in Arms, as the song goes. I love the one by Judy Collins is good, but my favorite one is who did the Sultans of Swing? I can't remember the group right now.
Straight to Brothers in Arms album. I don't know.
Brothers in Arms, yeah, from the Brothers in Arms, the group that did that does the very best rendition of Brothers in Arms from the Brothers in Arms album, and their video on that is phenomenal. So you get friends that you make that have stood beside you when you're in a battle scenario situation, that you have a bond, that a brotherhood of brothers in arms that goes beyond what most people could understand. So I've had people that have found me after I'm retired for 30 years, and they heard my voice and they go, I know who that is. And they contacted me and said, it is the same, you know, you that I know from before. I go, yeah, it is. And yeah, together and they go, you haven't changed at all. You're still the same. And so, you know, the nature of who we are doesn't change. And you get those core values, you can keep them for your entire life, and they will stand in your stead, and they will help you survive things the average person cannot survive. You have a strength of will, a strength of character, a strength of mind, spirit, and body that will see you through times that an average person won't make it. They're not going to make it. So I have no regrets for doing it, not one single thing. I was forced to go in due to the draft of the lottery at the time during Vietnam. I would not change one single thing I ever did, even the submarines I was sent to, the certain ones that were some of the worst and some of the best. I've done the best ones, and I've probably been on one of the worst ones, where after I left, they wound up decommissioning that submarine because it ran head on into a seamount. You know, because the captain was kind of crazy. So, to put it mildly, you know, it was a rugged submarine. It was an interesting one. It was the most interesting one. You know, those hard things are sometimes the most interesting things. And it opened my eyes to the fact that the Cold War was a fraud. No such thing never happened. It was the neocons taking over Russia. So the Satanists, and then they kicked them out of there. And so it was just fascinating to see how the information was flowing between the U.S. High Command and the Soviet High Command. Free flowed. I mean, just completely free flow. They're getting information. They're getting, like Kissinger went there because their missiles, their ICBMs, when they first got them, couldn't hit the broadside of a state. You know, not a bard, a state. They were so inaccurate. So Kissinger negotiated to get them laced to make the bearings very, very accurate for their guidance systems, so that they could have the accuracy, so that they were a viable threat. It's like what Stokely Carmichael said at the, I believe it was at Kent State, where he said, something is happening here, but you don't know what it is, from the Bob Dylan song. You know, pressure, and he talked about pressure from above and pressure from below. And so this, you know, pressure from below is all of what we see now with the Antifa and BLM and all of this. But pressure from above means a worthy adversary, a threat, the Soviet Union. Well, that went away. So what do? They replace it with terrorism, 911. So you get all this. This is a terrorist. We're going to take out all of these countries because they're terrorist states. And they keep going, Russia, Russia, Russia. Again, back to Bob Dylan. He said, I've learned to hate the Russians. Been taught to. We don't know why. We're just taught in school and by our parents and everything. You just hate them. We don't know anything about them. But, you know, that's why Tucker went there and showed what the people are really like and showed what their lives are like and talk to the leadership. And what are they really? They are pretty much, for the average person in my era and my time, and you too, Tom, they're like us. They're not much different. They have the same, they want to live their life, have their families, take care of their families, and, you know, have their country and their values and not have people messing with them. That's pretty much a human thing. So same thing with the Gaza. They have pretty much the same situation and they're being demonized. So it's this demonization, the same thing they did to Eric Bushnell. They demonized him immediately. Oh, he was this. No, he was not that. But they have to make that the good people that gave their lives into monsters. It's what the Satanists do. It's called projection.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Well, Gene, it's been it's been an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, but I think today was just really just fantastic.
I went a little longer because I think what we are talking about needs to be talked about and said. So thank you, Tom.
I think it does. It's been fascinating. It's been a real blessing and pleasure. And I can speak for my audience. They'll love, or will have loved the show now that they've seen it. So yeah.
It's always an honor, and I always look forward to being on your platform, Tom, and talking with you, because you bring out things that need to be said that are very important. So thank you so much, Tom, for having me back.
Pleasure, Gene. Always welcome. I'll speak to you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. God bless you, and God bless each and every one of you out there. Godspeed.
God bless. Godspeed. Thanks, Gene. Take care. Bye.